Welcome to Joy Meets World. I'm Joy, and this is my podcast where I share my adventures traveling the U.S., visiting national parks with my dog, Quincy. When we left off in the last episode, was leaving San Diego, and I was traveling to Ventura, California, which is north of Los Angeles, a little bit south of Santa Barbara, to visit Channel Islands National Park. So that's a drive of about 200 miles. Should take about 3 hours. Took more like 4.5, just because I stopped for lunch and I hit that famous Los Angeles traffic on a Saturday. Here's what I'll say about Los Angeles traffic. Does it compare to Atlanta traffic? They're comparable. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. If you've driven in Atlanta traffic, LA traffic is no big deal. The thing I will say is there was traffic on the 405, and I think the 5 was the other highway that I took on a Saturday. And it would have been comparable to like a Atlanta weeknight traffic situation. So yes, the LA traffic probably is a little worse just because it was like that on a weekend day. But also, I will definitely say Atlanta drivers are worse. You guys are crazy. LA drivers, much better. I had no issues. Everyone shared the road. Everyone, was cautious, and I felt no stress whatsoever driving in, 8 to 10 lanes of traffic at varying speeds with everyone. Like I normally am stressed out in Atlanta traffic. I also stopped for lunch at the famous In-N-Out Burger. Guys, I have wanted to stop for lunch at In-N-Out since I first been seeing it. Since I came west. And I'm not a big fast food person, so it wasn't always my first choice. I, definitely wanted to try it, but kind of avoided it. Well, I was hungry and I had to go to the bathroom, so that was the next stop. And oh my gosh, so good. I can see why there's a following. I can see why people are crazy about it, and I'm definitely going back. It's one of my favorites. I had a cheeseburger with the onions on it, and that sauce, it's like a Thousand Island sauce. Oh my gosh, so good. But everything was good. It was a great burger. Great burger. Highly recommend. French fries were good as well. So that's my take on In-N-Out Burger. I hope you get to try one in your life because I think it's totally worth it. Now, I stayed not in Ventura or Santa Barbara, but in a little town, I would say about 10 to 15 miles kind of north of Ventura, which is called Port Hueneme. And it's just a little beach town. I'm staying in a condo that's right on the beach, which is really fun. And you can see the Channel Islands from the beach, which is really cool. I was excited to visit this national park because I really hadn't heard of it before. It's not one that's commonly talked about or promoted, especially by national park visitors. There are other ones that get visited, like Joshua Tree, a lot more, and kind of get promoted a lot more, I think. And so I was super curious to find out, honestly, just what are the Channel Islands? How do you experience them? And just learning about them. And it was totally worth it. I'm so glad I made sure to stop here. It's a really cool experience. So you can only get to the Channel Islands by boat. And the National Park Service doesn't provide the boats for you to go over. They partner with 2 companies that are on the same marina as where they are located on the mainland. And so you have to book kind of a 3-hour cruise, for lack of a better term, with one of these companies. So I went with a company called Island Packers, and the day I could go, they were going to the Channel Island called Santa Cruz Island, which is one of the bigger ones. And so we left in the morning about 10 a.m., took about an hour and a half to get out to the island, and they picked us up back up in the afternoon around 3:30. And we headed back to the mainland. What I thought was interesting was you had to call in at 5 o'clock in the morning to their answering machine to see if your trip had gotten canceled or not. And one of the trips, mine didn't get canceled to Santa Cruz Island, but the one to Anapaca Island, which is next to it, got canceled because of northeast Santa Ana winds. And they didn't explain that, which is fine and that's fair, but apparently the direction of the wind and the amount of wind can really impact whether they can boat out to an island or not. The Channel Islands are a group of 5 islands, and some parts are owned by the National Park Service, and some are not. Some are owned by private landowners. Some parts of it are owned by other groups like the Nature Conservancy. So not all parts of the park are owned by the National Park Service or accessible to visitors. In 1938, it became a national monument, and then in 1980, it became a park, and it includes almost 250,000 acres, and that includes the ocean, the parts of the ocean that are designated as national park. Apparently, the islands were formed, they actually, millions of years ago, were down by San Diego, and kind of at one point when the Earth's plates were moving, they went kind of counterclockwise. They moved upwards counterclockwise all the way up here north of Los Angeles, kind of cut a corner from Santa Barbara, directly across from Ventura. And so at one point they faced north to south, but right now they face east to west. And they are pretty sure this happened because there's like volcanic material on the islands from a volcano that had erupted closer to San Diego way back when. So very, very interesting. I think the layout, kind of the composition of the islands is cool. So what you notice on the island is that there's some of the cliffs will be this like reddish black color. And then some parts will be completely white. It looks like sand, like white cliff, almost like Dover, the cliffs of Dover, white sand. And it's a mix of that. And that is from, the white part is called diatomaceous earth, which is from the bottom of the ocean. Diatoms, they die. They're these, minuscule, barely visible creatures. They die and they fall to the bottom of the ocean and form this layer of white dead creatures. Essentially, if you own a pool, you know what diatomaceous earth is, or if you've ever operated a pool. But it forms this layer and then it compacts into this kind of this white rock, but it's real sandy too rock. So the island is made up of this because when the islands form from a volcano, from tectonic plates smashing together, the lava came up from the bottom of the ocean, right? And that's the like blackish and reddish dirt. But also when it came up, it pulled up diatomaceous earth as well. And so that's white part. And so it's just a really cool looking makeup of the island. Also, obviously, it's covered in lush greenery. There were cacti on it, prickly pear cacti, and then there were tons of eucalyptus trees, giant eucalyptus trees. So you can imagine it smelled wonderful on this island. It smelled so good. Those are not indigenous. The Spanish explorers who settled the islands brought them over. So that's why they're there. But I loved them. The boat trip over and back was so great. It was fun to be on a boat. I love being on a boat. And we saw pods of dolphins. So on the way over, we saw a smaller pod, you would see sitting on the beach. You just see some dolphins, but they were really up close. They were close to the boat, so that was neat. On the way back, though, we saw, I don't know how to describe it other than like a horde of dolphins. It surrounded the boat for probably a mile. And what I didn't know is that for every dolphin that you see on the surface, there's 7 or 8 below the surface. So the guide said it's probably a pod of thousands of dolphins that we were seeing. And we just boated through them for about like 15 minutes. I mean, just imagine boating through just a group of dolphins for 15 minutes. It was incredible. Incredible. On the way there, we also spotted a small group of California gray whales, and they were going south down to Baja. So they make a round trip every year from Baja up to Alaska. So Alaska is where they feed, and then Baja is where they come down and make their families. To put it in the PG way, just because it's too cold in Alaska for the babies to survive. So they need the warm water of Baja to kind of birth and get their calves to a point where they're self-sustaining, but then they have to go north to get their food. So that's why they do the trek. They were going south when we saw them. We didn't get a good look, so we just saw them spurting water out. And kind of the tops of their backs. So apparently they're not real show-off whales. You don't see their tails or them doing jumps. That's pretty normal. But it was cool to see, them spouting water. What I didn't know is that the water comes from them exhaling. And it's not that they have water that they're spurting out. It's just that there's like a bowl, a depression that their blowhole creates. And so when they come out of the water, it collects like water, like a bowl. And as they exhale air, it just spurts that water that was already there. Also, if you look at them head on, their blowholes are in the shapes of hearts. Apparently, we didn't get close enough to see, but that's what they said, and I thought that was really cool. They said there were 3 of them together, and they said that's pretty normal because that's how they mate. And often they mate on the way down to Baja because they just, I guess, start the process. I guess when you're in the mood, you're in the mood. And it is normal, very normal for it to be 3 kind of at a time because logistically, it's just hard to do with 2. So I'll let you use your imagination and figure that out. I didn't know that. I thought it was a cool fact. But it was really neat seeing that wildlife. When I got on the island, did a guided hike with a volunteer named Cliff. Hey, Cliff, you were great. If you're listening, we hiked from Scorpion Cove, which is a natural... it's a cove, so it's a natural landing place. That's where the island packers pulled the boat into the jetty. That's where a lot of the kayakers and scuba divers were getting in the water. And it's named Scorpion Cove because there are white scorpions down there. I learned that on the hike, and that prevented me from going down to the beach because I have no desire to meet a scorpion ever. So we did a hike. It was about 1.5 miles to the top point of the island called Cavern Point. It's called that because there's a cavern right below it, and that's where the kayakers go in. But on the way, we saw these they're foxes. They're called island foxes. And the full-size ones get to the size of a house cat. And they're very, I wouldn't say friendly, but they definitely don't hide. They walk around like they own the place, and they're so, so cute. They're so tiny, guys. they almost look smaller than house cats. They're so cute. And it's kind of a cool story. So the islands used to be used for sheep farming. And when it was privately owned, it was used for sheep farming. And as you can imagine, sheep eat everything. So they like decimated the environment. So that happened. And then when the National Park Service came in, they started, replanting the native plants and conserving everything. And they found these island foxes, but they were, going extinct basically. And they did a lot of research and they could not figure out, they kept like mating the foxes and putting a ton on the island, and then they would like continually disappear. So they couldn't figure out what was happening. They tagged some foxes, and then the foxes would like stop moving. They'd go research, and these foxes are like dead, but like gutted and destroyed, kind of dead. So they were like, what the heck? And they figured out it was these golden eagles that were going after the foxes because they're meat eaters or carnivores. But the problem is golden eagles aren't native. They aren't indigenous to that part of California and to those islands. So they were like, why are the golden eagles here? And the bird that's supposed to be indigenous to that area, which is the bald eagle, which we're all familiar with, there was only like one or two on the islands. So they were really confused why there were so few bald eagles, and they would go and look at the bald eagle nest, and like the eggs of the bald eagles were like crumbly. Like none of the babies were surviving because the eggs couldn't survive. And so no babies were being born. And so they were like, what in the world is going on? Like, this is obviously everybody's going to go extinct on these islands if we don't figure out what's going on. And what they figured out was there was a big company. I can't remember the name now. I don't want to say the wrong name. It was dumping DDT in the channel. And it was poisoning everything in the channel. Bald eagles are pescatarians, essentially. They are fish eaters. So the bald eagles were eating the contaminated fish. It was affecting their eggs and their babies. So the babies were dying. So there were no bald eagles. So the golden eagles spotted an opportunity. There's lots of like wildlife over here, and we love to eat wildlife. So the golden eagles came in and then started taking out all of the foxes. So it was this crazy, crazy like story that they figured out. And what they did to fix it is they obviously stopped the dumping and started the cleanup. The company got sued, their pants got sued off, and they used that to like help with the research and the like reestablishment of all these, native animals. They literally captured every single golden eagle and moved them up to Northern California, to like the northernmost point in California, and they didn't come back. They built like artificial nests for bald eagles and like moved some from like zoos across the country there to like start mating. They like bred foxes like they'd been doing before and put them on the island. And then there were these like pigs there that the Spanish explorers had brought over, but they had turned wild. They'd like escaped and turned wild, and they were like destroying everything. And apparently it was this big controversy. They had to kill all the pigs at one point because nobody wanted the pigs. So like the sheep, once they got rid of the sheep, like people were like, yeah, we'll take sheep. Nobody wanted to take the pigs. Like they had no buyers, they had no takers. So they just had to kill them all, which is insane. So that is the story of the Channel Islands. And to date, there's like the population of the bald eagles has been restored to normal. The foxes are at a place where they feel it's really good. It's like a safe place for their population, like has grown to a safe spot. all the like native plants have grown back. They said once they took the sheep off, like all of the surfaces on the island were just brown because everything had been eaten. And I can tell you from my own experience, it's so green and so lush there. Again, it's February, but it is beautiful. It's a beautiful island. So that's a little bit of the history. Hopefully, I didn't bore you too much. I just think it's a really cool story. And after I did the hike, back to the hike, I did the hike to Cavern Point. I did another hike to a spot called Potato Harbor because the harbor is in the shape of a potato. I know. It's shocking. I thought it was a shorter hike. I don't know why I thought that because I had a map, but it ended up being a lot longer than I thought. And you had to be back at the jetty to get on the boat to go home by a certain time. And so that kind of freaked me out. So I didn't get to stay and look at Potato Harbor and like enjoy it as much as I wanted to. But the hike was gorgeous because it just took you across it took you along the bluffs of the island. So you were like literally walking not on a cliff, but like the edge of the island near the ocean the entire hike, which was amazing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. So the Channel Islands, definitely go. I think they're so cool. I think not a lot of people know about them or visit them, but it's like a whole different world out there. I loved being on a boat. That's different. Like nothing I've done so far have I had to, have I gotten to be on a boat or on the water. So I loved that. I loved getting to see all of the creatures. I loved learning about the history. I would totally recommend going to the National Park website, they have this huge like timeline document about the islands, like read about the history. It's really cool. There's stuff, it was a stop during Prohibition. There's like a little Smuggler's Cove. They filmed movies there because it's close to Hollywood. The sheep farming, like there's a lot of cool stories. I haven't even hit on them all that have to do with the Channel Islands. So go check that out. The weather was probably my favorite part. I know I say that for every part of California, but it's true. Just blue skies, no clouds, 70s. You're like warm, but you're never sweating because there's no humidity and there's always a breeze. It just feels so perfect. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Next time I come, if I came next time, I would definitely explore some of the other islands, Santa Rosa and Apaca. I believe the other one's San Juan? I'm not sure. I would do a different activity. Like I would go kayaking, and then, do some hiking and mix that in because I think it would be fun. I could possibly be even convinced to do some camping. So you can camp on the islands, and there were at least 50 campers who came back on the boat with us on Sunday night. I mean, it was kind of crazy. I wasn't expecting it, but apparently that's a really popular thing to do. It looked really fun. It looked easy. I think if I went with somebody who is an experienced camper, I would consider doing it. Looked awesome. That's it for Channel Islands National Park. Tell me what you thought. Leave a comment on my Instagram. Rate and review this podcast. I want to know what you think and if you would ever visit it, or if you have before, what you thought about it. Up next, I'm going to knock out Death Valley National Park in California. So I'm going to go inland again, going east. It's about 300 miles from where I am on the coast. So I can't wait to see that park. I can't wait to tell you about it. And until next time, I wish you the happiest of travels wherever life is taking you.